EU unites against Britain. All 27 leaders unanimously agree a plan for the Brexit negotiations, a deal struck in just 4 minutes. Also tonight in Scotland, Theresa May asks voters to strengthen her hands for those Brexit talks, while Jeremy Corbyn urges young voters to step up and take part. On his 100th day in office, Donald Trump condemns North Korea's latest missile launch. And Animal Magic, dressed as a gorilla, the marathon competitor who crossed the line 6 days after everyone else.
This is ITV News with Chris Shipp.
Good evening. In the end, it took only a matter of minutes and it was unanimous this afternoon. In a carefully staged show of unity, 27 EU leaders meeting without the UK agreed their guidelines for negotiations over Brexit. And as predicted, they want significant progress on several vexed issues before they'll discuss any new trade deal. Our Europe editor James Mates watched today's events in Brussels.
The first European summit to be held entirely without the UK since 1973. The remaining 27 meeting today to agree their negotiating guidelines for the next 2 years of negotiations with London. Theresa May had complained this week the rest of the EU was lining up to oppose the UK, and events today will not have changed her mind. As they sat around the table in their new kaleidoscopic conference room, it took just 4 minutes to agree the text without a single dissenting voice. Nothing, it seems, has created unity in the EU as much as the British leaving it. The EU will insist on a strict order for the negotiations, insisting that first it must agree the rights of EU citizens in the UK and the outstanding financial settlement seen by some as the Brexit bill. Only then will it start talks on a future relationship and possible free trade deal. And all 27 have agreed that none will engage in separate talks with London.
If someone expected some divisions among 27 would help the UK to achieve something better for them, it's a pure illusion for me. It's the only possible way to achieve a final agreement between 27 and UK is unity of 27, I have no doubts.
There was mention too of finding flexible and imaginative solutions to avoid a hard border between the north and south of Ireland. Irish Prime Minister Enda Kenny winning an assurance that were Ireland to unify, the north could immediately become part of the EU. Germany's Angela Merkel spoke last week of many in Britain still having illusions about what will be possible after Brexit. They hope today will put those straight, though no one is particularly optimistic about that.
So, James, as you said, and as Donald Tusk pointed out there, a united union. What do you think it tells us about the relative strength or weakness of Britain's position?
Well, what it shows is that not only the timetable but also the agenda is being dictated entirely here from Brussels. We know the timetable is limited to 2 years unless they agree unanimously to extend it. We know that they originally said they wouldn't negotiate before we triggered Article 50, and they didn't. And now they say they won't talk about any final deal or new relationship until we've sorted out that Brexit bill and the rights of EU citizens. A free trade deal is actually going to have to wait until after we leave the union, though they agreed maybe initial discussions can take place before. Britain's Brexit Secretary David Davis said he always knew that this would be tough and possibly confrontational, but it emphasised the need for a big majority for Theresa May. But interestingly, you're talking to people here about what the election means and whether a big majority makes any difference. They insist it simply doesn't, except in as much as it might give her the room domestically to make concessions or compromises that they say she's going to need to make.
OK, James in Brussels, thank you very much. So to that election campaign, and Theresa May used her first campaign visit to Scotland since triggering the election to urge voters to strengthen her hand in those negotiations. But SNP leader Nicola Sturgeon warned that another Tory government could lead to more cuts. Jeremy Corbyn asked young people to step up and vote, while the UKIP leader finally said where he'll stand. But there were scuffles at his event for the second day running. Angus Walker reports.
Conservative Prime Ministers don't always get a warm welcome in Scotland. The Tories started to lose Scottish votes back in the days of the last female Prime Minister. They've never really recovered. But Theresa May knows she needs to lead a united kingdom into the Brexit negotiations.
My message to the people of Scotland is clear. Every vote for me and my team will strengthen my hand in the Brexit negotiations.
But Scotland voted overwhelmingly to remain in the EU, and the Scottish National Party is promising another independence referendum in the event of what they call a hard Tory Brexit.
Well, one thing we can be absolutely certain the Prime Minister will not talk about in Scotland today is the Tory record in Scotland, because we know what that is, £3 billion of cuts.
Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn told supporters in East London not to be fooled into thinking this election was all about Brexit.
The Conservatives would much rather make incredible promises about Britain's future outside the European Union than talk about a scorecard of broken promises and neglect stretching back over 7 years.
He urged younger people to step up and vote for a fairer future, but wouldn't be drawn on questions about his own future if he loses this election.
You're asking younger people to step up. You also talked about your principles and your leadership. If, when it comes to people making up their minds, they decide they don't want you as their Prime Minister, would you have to step down?
We fight this election to win. We fight this election to get a message across.
The Lib Dems say they're the only party offering a clear choice for those who didn't and still don't want to leave the EU.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
UKIP leader Paul Nuttall finally announced he is standing in this election in the Brexit heartland of Boston and Skegness, ready for the rough and tumble of the campaign. But presumably this wasn't what he had in mind. His speech was cancelled when two women started exchanging strong views on British politics outside the venue. Brexit, it seems, can still divide the country. Angus Walker, ITV News.
More details have emerged about those arrested by anti-terror police after a house in North London was raided on Thursday. Our reporter Rebecca Barry is there for us tonight. Rebecca, what more can you tell us?
Well, the 6 people arrested in connection with what the police describe as an active terror plot are still being questioned by detectives. Armed police raided this house in Willesden on Thursday. 5 people were arrested here and a 6th person in Kent. A woman in her 20s who was shot during the raid remains under police guard in hospital and is in a stable but serious condition. It's reported that one of the suspects detained here was previously accused of trying to join so-called Islamic State fighters in Syria, but that he was released without charge when he returned to the UK. It's claimed that he was deported from Turkey in 2015 because the authorities feared he was trying to travel towards the border with Syria, but that Scotland Yard took no further action when he returned to Britain.
Rebecca, thank you very much. A man has appeared in court today charged with the murder of former Royal Navy officer Mike Samwell. He was allegedly run over by his own car while trying to stop thieves stealing it outside his home in Chorlton in Manchester on Sunday. Magistrates in the city have remanded a 29-year-old man in custody. Worldwide condemnation has again greeted North Korea's latest attempt to test fire a ballistic missile. President Trump said the test, which failed when the missile exploded seconds after launch, had disrespected the wishes of China and the UN. Lucy Watson reports.
The problem of North Korea weighs heavy, and Donald Trump is being forced to respond to the world's most dangerous regime and its latest provocation.
Any reaction to North Korea, sir? Any reaction to the missile launch in North Korea, sir?
북한이 조금 전에 또다시
South Korean television announced that the North tested yet another ballistic missile overnight by showing previous failed attempts, pushing Donald Trump and his bluster onto Twitter. North Korea disrespected the wishes of China and its highly respected president when it launched, though unsuccessfully, a missile today. Bad. But North Korea is not the only one playing war games. These are US and South Korean forces earlier this week, practicing for conflict, showing that any attack would be met with stronger opposition. But North Korea's neighbours are still nervous. Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe criticised the test this afternoon on a visit to London. It is a grave threat to our country. This is absolutely unacceptable. We strongly condemn such acts. Its fear of a nuclear strike is a real one, with Tokyo closing its metro today. And there was a warning too at the UN Security Council from the South Korean government that the North could face tougher sanctions. The US says it's keeping military options on the table, but wants to solve this diplomatically. But when you're dealing with the world's most unpredictable nation, it warrants handling with care. Lucy Watson, ITV News.
Football and Sunderland have been relegated from the Premier League after losing 1-0 to Bournemouth this afternoon. That result, along with Hull's draw at Southampton, ends their 10-year stay in the top flight. Elsewhere, Leicester won. It was goalless at Stoke, and it's currently Crystal Palace 0, Burnley 1. In Scotland, Celtic are still on course for an unbeaten domestic season after thrashing Old Firm rivals Rangers 5-1. This goal completed the scoring, which secured their biggest ever win at Ibrox. The champions now haven't lost in 41 league and cup matches. Boxing, and the most eagerly anticipated fight for years, gets underway tonight. Britain's Anthony Joshua takes on former world champion Vladimir Klitschko, defending his world heavyweight title at Wembley in front of a record 90,000 fans. Finally, a man who dressed as a gorilla has completed the London Marathon almost a week after everyone else. The Metropolitan Police officer Tom Harrison here, an imitation of a gorilla, crawled the whole 26-mile route on his hands and feet before standing up and, yes, beating his chest at the finish line. His marathon effort as a great ape has raised nearly £26,000 for charity that supports gorillas.
Tough at points, but no, I'm really glad I've done it, and it's kind of highlighted gorillas' plight all over the world, so that's been fantastic, and all the support I've received along the way has just been awesome.
And that's it. The late news is at 10:15.